Also, I'll be sharing my screen here. So just to be making sure here, we all on the same page. I believe you all
Yes,
my
that's
screen.
fine. That's fine.
Okay, perfect. So here, Jaipur is this city in the northwest part of India, and is also one of the major tourist attraction for any travelers coming to India. So majority of people, when they come and travel to India, more than 50% of the travelers come to the northwest part of India, and they cover the three important cities which are called the Golden Triangle here. And Jaipur is a part of the Golden Triangle. So here is the map of India. This is what you can see. So this is where we are flying, and this is where we are flying into India today. So being a virtual flight, this is how we are traveling because there's no typical, So all these travel flights have been banned at the moment for almost 1 year now. And if you see the northwest part of India, this is a highlighted area. This is the state of Rajasthan. So Rajasthan means the land of Rajasthan, the land of the Rajas and the kings. And the capital of the state is this star sign, what I've highlighted here. And this is where we are. This is the city of Jaipur. So when you fly into India, you come to the capital of India, which is called Delhi, and that is the biggest international airport. So that's where you have Delhi. Along with that, you had other city called Agra, which is the home for the world famous Taj Mahal, which we were just talking about here. And then from Agra, that's how we have the third city called Jaipur around here. So that's how it's a shape like a triangle here. And that is what it is referred as the Golden Triangle. So when you land in Delhi, that's the first place you come in here. And that is where you get your sensory overload. It's a big city here with millions of people, a big crowd, a huge population, sensory overloads here. So all these different sounds and smells. And Delhi is very chaotic and find it crazy here. So Delhi has been a capital for a long time. So if we see the history of India, India actually got independent in 1947. So before the independence, it was a British colony. And that is how it was a British colony for almost 200 years here. And that is the reason that you'll be finding a lot of British influence of that time in the 18th, 19th century can be found in Delhi with a lot of these monuments built during that time. But if we slightly go beyond that time, if you go slightly in the history of Delhi before the 18th century, we also see that before the Britishers, India was also being captivated and was a Mughal empire here. So it was ruled by the Mughal people who came from Persia. So if you see the map of India, and from here, if you slightly travel to the west here, you come to the country called Iran. Iran is the current country. So this is the place which was called the Persian Empire in the 15th, 16th century. And that is how we have this Muslim invaders called Mughals who came and settled in Delhi and Agra, and they ruled India for 300 years. And that is what, when you come to the second city of the Golden Triangle, you come to Agra, which was the capital of the Mughal Empire. And that is how one of the famous king of the Mughal Empire was Shah Jahan, who built this beautiful monument for his wife, the favorite wife, the third wife here. And that is what it's called Taj Mahal, which people come to India and to have this, they want to tick off this bucket list item of their list. So that is how this is very important circuit here. So you can easily spend a couple of days in Agra visiting Taj Mahal and some of the other Mughal monuments. What you see, the Red Fort of Agra, the Tomb of Akbar, and the Baby Taj here. But again, from here, if you take a 4 hours drive, which is like an hour of flight here, you come to the third city of the Golden Triangle, which is called Jaipur, the pink city of India. So this is a Hindu Rajput state ruled by the Hindu Rajput kings here called the Kachhawa rulers. And that is how we have a lot of different palaces and forts built into different timelines, starting from the 13th century, then the 16th century, and so on. But really, we'll not be going back into the old history here. Today, we'll be doing a 90-minute tour here. And that is where I'll try to give you an example of that. How are the important places when you come to Jaipur? Like it's like a one-day tour, So you can visit the highlights here, but also understand the local life of today, the kind of food habits, what we have, the religious practices, and a lot of other historical things, what we'll cover in the tour here. So here I'm starting with this beautiful monument. So what you're looking on your screen right now is this beautiful, magnificent fort built in the late 16th century in the year 1589. It's called the Amer Fort or the Amer Palace. So this was the residence of the king where he was residing. And there were 4 different levels of the structures which were used by the king for his military, for his public administration, and the residential areas. And this particular fort is built into a valley, like between the mountains. And you'll get an idea about this place by looking at this video here. So right now we're standing on this mountain top along with these walls on the tower here, and look at the landscape here. Just 1 second here. I believe you could hear the sound is here. Okay, so this was the landscape. As you could see, this is the Amer Fort, and that's how it is built in that valley between the mountains. It has its own natural protection here. So as you are driving towards the Amer Fort early in the morning, this is your typical first sight. You see a lot of these elephants walking on the streets, very beautifully decorated on their forehead and trunk. And this is our typical morning hustle with the elephant. So as you come to the big cities like Delhi and Jaipur, you feel a lot of crowd, a lot of traffic on the streets. But not only you'll find the cars and the bikes, you can also find a lot of cows in the streets, a lot of camels and elephants walking on the streets in the streets of Jaipur here. So this is the Amer Fort, which is slightly on a hilltop. So a lot of people, when they come here, they take this elephant ride, and that's how they arrive on the top of the Amer Fort. So this is your ride, and you come to the top of the Amer Fort, which is the first common entrance point. And as you can see here, it's a big open space, like a big courtyard. And that's how the elephants are dropping the guests at one corner. And that's how they arrive. As a traveler, a tourist with a guide. So this is the first courtyard where it was used by the military and the soldiers, So whenever the head of the army in that time in the 16th, 17th century would have their brief meetings in the parades, all that was conducted into this particular courtyard. But today, this is the entrance point of the Amer Fort, where you could see the elephants dropping the guest here. So here we buy the entrance ticket, which is roughly $7 US, and then we combine, we take the staircase here, and then we climb the staircase, and we arrive to the next level of the fort, which is called the Diwane Arm, which typically translate as the Hall of Public Audience. So this is more like a public administrative block where the king was running the capital from, and this was his office area. So this is the complex where you can see he was sitting inside the building along with the ministers, and the people could sit outside, and that is how he could have his meetings in this particular courtyard here. And as we move along in the courtyard here, you see different styles of architecture with the pillars and different corners. And as you could stand in here on this particular point, you can see the entire Amer Fort with the backdrop of the mountains and the This is the first courtyard, which is the public space where the king would reside and sit along with the ministers, and the people could sit outside as a public audience here. And here in the building, as you move around, you see a lot of detailed carvings on the stonework, typically the Indian style of architecture, which can be seen on all these pillars here. But along with that, they also have the influence of the Mughal Empire, which was a Persian Empire. So a lot of these Muslim invaders, when they came to India, they also brought a lot of their Mughal practices and the architectural style here. So if you come to this corner, you can see a lot of detail, like the arch is a lot of symmetry in the pattern. So look at this beautiful archway here. This typical Mughal style of architecture. And again, if you move to the other corner, you can see this big, beautiful door, like a big gate here, which is called the Ganesh Gate. A lot of these Persian paintings with the flowers here. So this is what the big entrance door here is. Again, a very good example of the mixture. Sorry. A very beautiful example of the Islamic and the Hindu architecture here. So right on the borders, you can see the Persian paintings. What are these? So this is what the Persian paintings are. But if you see in the right, in the center, here you could find a beautiful painting, which is actually a Hindu god here. Can anybody see a beautiful painting with the elephant head, the Hindu god here? Does anybody know the name here? Can you name what Hindu god you see here?
Ganesha.
That's right. That's the Hindu god called Ganesha, the elephant god. So Ganesha is the Hindu god which is known for its, it's again superpowers, which is typically the god of good luck and prosperity. So whenever you walk into an Indian house or a business, very commonly you'll find the Ganesha statues and the paintings on the entrance point. And that means that the Ganesha would bring good luck to your business and to your house, that how the prosperity and the good luck would be brought to you here. So this particular door, as we are looking at here, is called the Ganesh gate, the Ganesh pole. And that's the entrance gate. Once we cross this door, we come to the next courtyard, which is more like the residential part of the king and the queen of that time here. So this is where we are. I'm in the third courtyard. And that's where you can see a very beautiful garden right in the center. It's called the Mughal garden. And then we have two complexes on both the sides here. And this particular fort was built by King Man Singh. So this is the private residence of the king here. So it's more like the summer palace and the winter palace where the people, I mean, the king would reside with the wives here. So this is the king of Amer, then called Man Singh first. He built this particular fort here in 1589, and this was the residential area of the king here. And this particular king was very famous for his big harem sections. He had a very big harem, which means he had a lot of wives here. So this gentleman had 12 wives with a total of 200 concubines. So imagine having 12 wives and keeping everyone happy. So what they used to do in those times, they always used to have their favorite wives, and they would rotate their favorite wives every few months. So in that case, every wife would get a chance to spend the time, like a couple of months with the king, and that is how the king would spend the time with his favorite wife in this complex called the summer complex and the winter complex. So this particular building, what you're looking on your screen right now, is called Sheesh Mahal, and as you can see the name on the left corner here, Sheesh is the word which means mirror, and Mahal is the word which means palace. So it's actually called the Mirror Palace or the Palace of Mirrors. So what you're looking on the image right now here is all these work, what we see on the ceiling and the walls around here is all very intricate design of the glasses and the mirrors, which is like an inlaid of the glasses and mirrors on the ceiling here. So now we have a legend here that one of the favorite wife of the king here, she requested to the king that she wanted to sleep under the stars. And the king suggested it is not safe for you to sleep under open sky on a daily basis. So let me build a beautiful palace for you. And that is where you'll get the impression that you're sleeping under the stars. And that is how this beautiful Sheesh Mahal or the Mirror Palace was built in the year 1720s. So as you can see, the next set of images, everything what you see on the ceiling here is all the beautiful work of the mirrors and the glasses. And look at this one here. So you have this beautiful morning light coming through the windows, but rest everything what you see on the ceiling on the top part is again a very intricate detailed work of the glasses in the mirrors. So that's how these palaces were built here, which is called the Mirror Palace, or also served as a winter palace for the royal family. So what they used to do here is, as the wife suggests that she wanted to sleep under the stars. So this particular monument of the palace was built. So in the evening when the sun used to get down here, so it used to be very dark here. They had no electricity back in those days. So what they used to do here is they used to light up these hundreds of oil lamps and candles all around in the rooms and the complex. So imagine when you're sitting under a dark room where the ceiling is covered with glasses and you light up these candles and lamps here. So the reflection of these candles will be coming back from the ceiling, from the glasses, and those little dots as a reflection looks like stars in the sky here. So that is how these stars in the sky resembles as in the Mirror Palace, and that's became the beautiful Sheesh Mahal of the royal family of Jaipur, which also served as a winter room here. So I'm sure ladies here they can relate to that. So when you sit on your makeup table with the lights on, after some time you start feeling hot because the heat which is generated by the lamps is reflected by the glasses. So similarly, a lot of these hundreds of candles and oil lamps, which was generating a lot of heat, was reflected by the glasses, and that's how they used to keep their place warm and cozy in the winter nights here. So this is some of the closed sections of the Mirror Palace where you can see the detailed, intricate work of all these designs which were done on the walls and the ceiling. And this is the complex. So you can see the Summer Palace on the opposite side with the garden here. And then when you walk around from here, you can come inside the Today when you come here and visit this particular palace in the morning hours and you come and pull your mobile phone, so you can switch off the light on your camera phones on your mobile phone, and you flash that light, you could see the reflection of that light coming back, and that's how this little dots, little glittering stars appears here in the mirrors here. So this is the second largest mirror palace in the world today, which is in Jaipur and the Amer Fort here. So does anybody know here which is the largest mirror palace in the world? Because I said here it is the second largest. So anybody traveled and seen the largest mirror palace? Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's in France, somewhere in Paris. So if somebody has traveled there, must be knowing that. Okay, not really. So I don't know if you've traveled to France. This is a place called the Royal Palace of Versailles. That's the largest mirror palace in the world, followed by the mirror palace in Jaipur, which is in Amer Fort here. So that is how we could see the different parts in the Amer Fort itself. But here I also want to talk about the cultural life of the ladies. So even today, when you come to India, you find ladies wear a lot of these clothes, which are called the saris, and they cover their head and they typically remain inside. A lot of people, when you go in the markets, you don't find females everywhere. So men are generally going out where they are the main responsible people for earning the bread and butter. The ladies are typically confined to their homes where they're doing they're handling their homes and they're handling the family and taking care of the kids and the kitchen here. So even back in those days, when the ladies used to walk outside the palace areas, they typically always would have their privacy. They would cover the face. It's like a parda system. They would not show the faces outside to the men on the markets here. So that is how they have created a lot of these structures within the palace areas. So if you can see these three windows here, so these are the windows which are top on the Ganesh pole here. So remember we entered through this door here. You can see on the top here, there are three windows. So these are the three windows which are typically here where the ladies could sit here and they could see what's happening outside in the public area without being watched by the men from here. So that is how the ladies could see without being exposing themselves to the public here. So the people who are sitting outside cannot see the faces on the behind the windows here, but the ladies can see what's happening. So that is how they have created a lot of these window sections in the Amer Fort and a lot of other structures, which became the vantage point for the ladies. And that's how they have the privacy here. And again, if you can see another window here, and this is where you can see outside in the Amer town that how this town was with the township, the entire settlement. So that's where you can... So as you could see outside in the Amer town, that's how you have old houses and you have the entire mountain range kind of surrounding the entire town of Amer. And on top of these mountains, if you notice, there's like a stretch of walls which have been constructed, which can be seen here. And on top of these walls, you have these little towers like watchtowers every few hundred meters. So these were the watchtowers where the guards were posted, and that's how they used to defend their town of Amer and the fort itself. And these are the walls, what you can see. So these are the Great Wall of Amer that's stretching over 18 kilometers in length, and they're said to be the third largest fortified walls in the world today, followed by the Great Wall of China, of course. These are the largest walls in the world. So now from here, as we are moving towards the Amer Fort, this is where we arrive to the last section here. This is called the Janani Diori, the female courtyard. So the female courtyard is like a haram section where all these wedded wives, the queens of the king, used to live. So the king had 12 wives. So he would always spend with the time with his favorite wife into the summer palace or the winter palace. The remaining 11 wives would be living in their own apartments in this haram section here. And this is what it looks like, as you can see here. So the ladies, the queens, each of these queens had their own individual apartments. And that's how these little doors are leading to the apartments. So whenever the ladies would walk out of their apartment, they could come to the center point here. And that's how the ladies would socialize and hang out into these areas, the common courtyards. So this is what are typically the Facebook or the Twitter of the 16th, 17th century, where the ladies would hang out and gossip among themselves. And this courtyard, being the female section here, is very limited only to females. That means the men's were not allowed here. So all the people serving the queens, the servants, the guards were all females in this particular area here. So king was the only male member as an exception who could come to these areas and access and come to the last part of the Amer fort. So that is how we have these four different levels, the four different areas of the fort itself, where the king used to reside, and he has different purposes where he was spreading, he was having his little life here and ruling the capital, the Amer town here. And as they were ruling here in the Amer town for over 200 years here, so they were here from 1589 till 1727. So as you come into the Amer fort here, you can easily spend a couple of hours. But even if you come here, a lot of people miss out on these local spots. So what you can do here is you can walk out of the Amer fort and you can take a little walk around to the town of Amer. So these are the streets. This is what it looks like today. So these are the old streets where you can see a lot of temples here, a lot of Krishna temples and Ganesha temples, which are typically very common gods in the North India. And this is a very important or a very beautiful Krishna temple, which was built in the early 17th century here. So this is called the Jagat Shiromani temple with the beautiful red sandstone and beautiful Indian style of architecture. But the place what I want to bring you here is a very beautiful structure next to this temple here. And this structure looks like this. Can you see this particular part here? You see a series of these stairs here. So this particular image, which I shot in 2018, as you can see, the colors are slightly washed off because of the rainwater here. But again, the following year in 2019, they cleaned this place and painted the entire area. You can see a lot of these, it's like an optical illusion. You can see a series of these stairs going down, and this is what it looks like. Can anybody guess what this place looks like? So you can see the stairs. I'm walking down the stairs here. So this is what the structure looks like. You can see the stairs on the three side, and they have a little platform on this one side, on the fourth side here. And you can see the water underneath here. So any idea what this place looks like? What could be the purpose here? Okay, so as you could see this little video here with all these pictures here, this is like a structure where you have a lot of these stairs on the three sides, and they have this little one platform on the other side here. So these are called the step wells, which are very commonly found in the northwest part of India. So just to give a backdrop to this little thing so that you can understand and make sense here. So if you see the northwest part of India, this is a very hot and dry area. We typically don't have any major rivers in the region. And we get a very little rainfall during the rainy season, which typically comes in the month of July and August here. And in the summer season, during the months of April, May, and June, the temperature is very hot here. It's almost like 45 to 47 degrees in the daytime. So it's like burning hot here. So all these years, when the people were living in the town of Amer, they always used to depend on the underground water table for their water needs. So they didn't have rivers, they didn't have any major rainfall here. And that is how they started making these big open spaces like square and rectangular shapes. And these are called the step wells. So the idea was that they want to give a big open space to people where the people can come in big numbers and they can come in here to collect water for their drinking, washing, and bathing. But at the same time, if they come here, and you can see there are like platforms like these. So these are the kind of platforms where the people used to go down in the summer hot days in the daytime, and they can socialize and sit on these platforms. And these areas under the ground level are much cooler as compared to the temperature on the ground level outside here. So these were the places which also became the cultural hotspots or the socializing places for the local people at that time, but also for the people to come and collect water for all their drinking, washing, and bathing needs. So today when you come here, this is the old monument. People typically don't come here to collect water because nowadays every household have their kitchen and bathroom, which are equipped with the water taps now. So today, these are the old monuments, which are the kind of hidden gems of Jaipur. And these are the beautiful structures, what you can see. But if you come here in the summertime here in the morning hours, you could typically end up meeting some local kids of the region from the region here. And that's how these young kids would come and, they play in the place here. It's more like a swimming pool for them. So they come here and jump into the water. This is how today you can see these kind of step wells in different towns of Rajasthan across in the northwest part of India. So every big town here would have a couple of these kind of step wells, and that's how they were using these kind of step wells in that time here. So this is what the step well from Amer. So whatever we have seen here is typically the early 16th, 17th, and the 18th century. And that's how the people were residing in these areas. So you might be wondering that Puneet, we have seen a lot of that, but we haven't seen anything pink as of for now, because what we have seen is only the yellow forts and the yellow step wells and the old town here. So now we are moving to the next part here, and that is where you see a lot of pink, which is called the pink city. So now, as the people were residing in the Ame town, which is confined within the valley in the mountain, the population of the town was growing. And for a growing population, they needed a very big space here. So that is how the mountains were becoming the barrier. The mountains became the barrier for the growth of the town itself. So that is when this gentleman called Maharaja Savai Jaising II, the king of Jaipur that time in the 1727, he decided to move slightly south of Amer, which is 10 kilometers south, and into more plain areas. And that's where he decided to make the new city called Jaipur. So the king named his Jai Singh, and that's how he found the name of the city itself. And he coined the city's name after his name as Jaipur. And that is how, when you come to Jaipur, you see everything is being painted in this similar shade of terracotta, which looks like a pink color here. So now we are entering the city of Jaipur, and everything's been painted in the pink. But this actually happened quite later in the 1876. So Jaipur became a first planned city in India, founded in 1727. But actually, in the later 1876, when the British Empire was here, the British was ruling India, and that is when it was painted pink in 1876. So now what happened in 1876, we have a gentleman called Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales from London. He was traveling to India, and he was a very good friend of the king of Jaipur then, whose name was Ram Singh. So that is how the king of Jaipur then, Ram Singh, decided to paint the entire city in this shade of terracotta, and he wanted to give a warm welcome to his friend. So this particular shade is the depiction of, the color terracotta actually depicts the emotion of friendship, and that is why he chose this color. So when Ram Singh painted the entire city in this shade of terracotta and Albert arrived here, he was really happy and overwhelmed by the expression. And that's what he thought, that, somebody has painted the entire city for his welcome. And that is where he coined the term, and he gave the title to Jaipur as the Pink City. So that is how in 1876, Jaipur was given the name of the Pink City. And after that, all these years till date, the city has been maintained and been painted in the same style and been painted in the pink color here. But today, as you can see, Jaipur has grown to a very big city. It's a very, it's a home for 4 million people. So there's a new part of Jaipur, which is the modern town today. That is where you see a lot of big buildings, very multicolored houses here. But even today, when you come to the old part of Jaipur, which is the walled city, what we are looking at your screen here right now, that is where you see everything is painted in the pink color. So for example, if you walk into these streets here, as you can see here, so everything's painted in the same shade. So if you're a homeowner or a business owner in the old town here, you cannot change the color of your own house or a business here. Because if you do that, you get a fine or you get a ticket here. So you cannot change the color of your own house. The government of Jaipur, they maintain and they paint all these houses in the pink city. And that's how they've been maintaining this particular style here. So let's take a little walk into the old, in the old city of Jaipur, and let's see how these markets are here. So this is typically present Jaipur. It was just shot 1 month back. And as you can see, whenever you come into India and you go to any of the big cities in India, this is how they look like. You have a huge population, the markets are crowded, you see traffic everywhere, and a lot of honking. As you could see, I'm sure you could hear the honking as well. But one particular thing what you see here is all the backdrop, all these buildings are painted in the similar style, which is the terracotta shade. And that is the theme of Jaipur, the pink city, called the pink color, what we saw. So when you come to this old market here, this is the center point, the center of the city here. It's a very busy market here. And as you walk in the streets, this is the local life of today, what you can see. So when you walk on these streets, you could find different streets with different type of markets here. So this is where you can see a typical, so these are a couple of pictures which I've shot before the pandemic. So you don't see people wearing masks. So this is more like a hardware market. The people are walking around here. Then you come across one of the corners here. You can find a small corner shop making samosa and kachori. These are local snacks from Jaipur. I'll be talking about the food at the end here. But here, just to give an idea, every little corner you can find the chai walas, the tea shops, and the samosa shops here. And that's how they look like. So these are very commonly everywhere. You can find a lot of these food stalls and the samosa corners, tea stalls, and that's how these markets are. There's another street here. This is called the Spice Market. So the entire street has minimum around 80 to 100 shops, and all these shops, what you will find, all these different kinds of spices and dry fruits here. So these are the local people of Jaipur. Then another street here, as you walk around here, you find a lot of different vendors like a vegetable market and the fruit vendors here. So this is where you can find fruits and all these vegetables around here. And then we have another corner here, which is called a flower market. So this is where you can find a lot of these flower shops, people making these garlands and bouquets. And that's where you can smell like, it smells like heaven with all these jasmine and marigold and rose flowers here. So that is how you can come to Jaipur and take a lot of these kind of tours here, like a market tour, going into the flower markets and spice markets, taking a food tour, going in the markets here, enjoying different street snacks here. And that's what can be done here. So you can easily spend 3 to 4 days in Jaipur. And the best time to come and visit Jaipur with the winter season here is. So as I said, the summers are very hot. So the best time would be winters from the month of November to March here. So early of November till the early of March is a good time. It is cold here. Not really that cold, maybe something like your summers. That's how we have the winters here. So that is how you can enjoy the walking around and taking these market tours. And as we are walking in the markets here, there's one important building which you'll see in the main street on the main market here. And this is what the building looks like. So look at this structure. It's a 15-meter tall building and it has a 5 stories. And they have these multiple stories with these small windows, what you can see here. So this particular building is right in the main market on the main street here. And this is what it's called, the Hawa Mahal or the Wind Palace. So this is the Wind Palace, which is a 5-story building with a total of 953 windows. And this is how it was built for the ladies. So as you can see here, it's right on the main market with the traffic here and the small shops around the corners here. So these were the places where the local people used to come and shop. So even today, when you come around here, this is the center of the city, which is most crowded and everybody comes here for shopping. So back in those days, when the ladies, the queens used to come to this palace here, they could sit behind this building here and they could see what's happening in the public area in the market and they could see the activities without being watched by the people here. So that's how they had the privacy here. So when you come inside the building, this is what it looks like. So you can come inside the building from the white little door here and you enter here, you come to this courtyard, which you can see the 5 stories here. And every little floor has these windows, the small windows where the females could sit around here and they could see what's happening outside. So these were the places for the females to see the life of the local people or what is the kind of activities, the parades and festivities, what's happening in the streets. So today, when you want to see the best views of the Hawa Mahal of the Wind Palace, you actually have to come across the street here, which is like a local spot here. It's called a cafe. And that is what it looks like. Look at this stunning view of this building here. So imagine you are sitting at this cafe on the terrace here. It's on the 3rd floor. It's the open terrace. And you can enjoy your food here. You can enjoy your coffee or chai. And you have the views like that. So you're sitting, sipping a coffee or tea. That's how you look at the market. So this is the main market here. So if you look at the Jaipur economy today, in Jaipur, we have tourism is the biggest economy, along with jewelry and the cotton textile here. So we produce a lot of cotton fabrics and beautiful designs here. It's called the block printing. I'll talk about that. Jaipur is also known for its jewelry designing. So if you are interested in gold, silver, and diamond, and a lot of other semi-precious gems and stones, so all these beautiful designs and the jewelry making is done in Jaipur here. So Jaipur is a very big cultural hub for that. And the third economy, as I said, the tourism. So a lot of people as travelers and tourist people coming to Jaipur. So that is how the Jaipur scene is look like. So here we are in the main street on the main market here, overlooking the Hawa Mahal. So let me also. So as we are looking at this building here, this is a 15-story building. This is the tallest building in the world today without any foundation. So what we are looking at the structure is doesn't have any foundation. It was built right on the ground up above, and that is it was built in the year 1799. So almost more than 250 years here. So this is what Hawa Mahal here is. And as you can see, there are a lot of big markets around the Hawa Mahal. You can see all these shops here. So let me take a little walk around the markets and let's go to the streets and do some shopping here. Anybody love shopping here? Okay, I could see Linda raising her hand. So Linda, do you when you go for shopping, do you enjoy bargaining or you are more into fixed price things?
I don't like to bargain.
Oh my God! So that's that. If you're here in India, you'll have a tough time because So a
Yeah.
lot of these places, when you go to these markets, a lot of places you have to actually bargain really hard here. So haggling is kind of a more of a social norm. It's more like interacting with the customer or the shopkeeper here, and that's how you get the right price. So whatever time you spend in shopping, the half of the time goes in getting the right thing what you want, selecting the right product. But the other half of the time is spent on typically bargaining and getting the right price here. So let's take a little walk here and let me show you the beautiful things of Jaipur, what it is famous for. So this is where we are walking around the streets here. A lot of things what we are watching here are the leather shoes and the leather bags here. So this is all the camel leather, and that is how these beautiful shoes are made. These are the called jutis. So that is how we have these colorful shoes and bags for men and women here. You can see the slippers here as well. So this is all the camel leather. This is a very small shop here. This is the jewelry shop, and this is what I was talking about, this famous gold, diamond, and all these silver. So if you're interested in jewelry, this is the Jaipur is the right place to buy all these beautiful designs. And all of lot when if you see the Indian weddings, which are very grand and very expensive. So generally people in India, they would come to Delhi or Jaipur to do all their wedding shopping, be it clothes or be it jewelry here. So that is where Jaipur is the best place for jewelry designing and buying jewelry. And this is where I'm talking about the textile, what Jaipur is famous for, which is called block printing. All these beautiful dresses, the tablecloth, the bed sheets, and all these ghagras and the beautiful skirts and the shirts here. This is what a cotton dresses are, and they're typically made with a very old art form which comes from Jaipur, which is called the block printing. Does anybody knows about block printing, or do you have anything in the block printing you have used or bought before? This is kind of very trending these days because all it is very organic here, the organic cotton which is grown here. And all this designing and manufacturing done is even today done with the same old style, which is all manually done here. So this is what I'm briefly talking about block printing. So as you can see here, there's a block on the left corner of your screen. It's a typical design. So when you come here, you say, I want my own unique design for my dress. You can give a design to the artisan and they would create that design on the wooden block. And that is how it is done. They actually make a design on the wooden block. So once your design is ready, that's how it is called the block. So that is ready. So the second process to print that design on the fabric. So they will have the entire big cotton fabric laid down on the big table, and they would start stamping that design.
मेरे दादा ने भी काम करा बैठ के दादा फादर
And that is how this fabric is made. So once your fabric is ready, then you can customize and make to whatever you want. You can have your bed sheets, your bed covers, your kaftans, your shirts, and that is what this particular thing is famous for. So this is a very old art form which is called the block printing, which comes from Jaipur. And even today, this has been practiced in the same old style. And that's a very big part of the Jaipur economy today, called the block printing textile industry from Jaipur. So these are the kind of very beautiful dresses. What you can see here, you can buy from different brands from across Europe and North America. So a lot of these businesses now from different parts of other countries, they get their manufacturing done in Jaipur, and then they sell to their respective markets in Europe and North America. So this is the beautiful cotton block printing here.
Puneet, how long does it take to make a dress like that?
Uh, if you see the fabric here, to make a fabric of around 20 to 30 meter, it will take them a day here. Day in terms of making the entire printing, but even just making the design, the block takes a couple of days to couple of weeks, how big or the intricate design is. So if you come here, you say that I want a typical my own dress here, it will take 4 to 5 days for them to actually make the entire thing from scratch, from making the design, then printing that and getting it tailored for you. Five to under a week's time here, though it would be slightly expensive. Otherwise, you can always, get and buy things which are already been made into bulk, and that's what you can buy from the different markets here. Do we have any other questions about the pink city or the markets, or should we move ahead in the palace here? Okay, so as we are into the pink city in the Jaipur, as we saw all these beautiful markets and this beautiful Hawa Mahal, the Wind Palace, now we'll go to the next monument here, and that is where we'll talk about the local life of the King of Jaipur today. So even today we have the King of Jaipur, and they are residing in their own palace here. So this is what you're looking at. This is the city palace, the current residence of the King of Jaipur, and this is the palace which was built in the 1730s when they moved from the Amer Fort to Jaipur. So this is how they built this palace in the center of the city, right in the center. And this particular palace is half of the palace is the private residence of the king, where they reside here. But the other half of the building here is open to public as a museum. This is more like a monument you can come and visit here. So this is the first corridor as you enter the city palace here. And this is what it looks like, all in the glory of their pink color, painted in this beautiful shade here. So this is the first courtyard as you enter the city palace. So as you can see, this is the palace which was built in the 1730s, almost like 300-old-year palace here. But as you walk inside the palace here, you actually don't feel like that it's a 300-old-year palace, because it's very beautifully maintained and all very beautifully painted here. So this is the first courtyard as you enter inside, and you see a lot of this European style chandeliers hanging in the ceiling here. You have a lot of these detailed, intricate paintings here. So all this work was actually done in the late 1870s, where the King Ram Singh called an English-British architect from London, and he did the interiors of the city palace. And that is how you see it is very beautifully maintained and very well kept here even today here. So now as we are walking in the corridor here, the first thing what we'll notice here, see these big two silver jars or the silver vessels which are kept here. So these are the two big silver vessels which are kept here, which were built in the year 1902. And today they hold the Guinness World Record to be the biggest silver objects in the world. They're standing like 5 feet 3 inches tall. So does anybody can make a wild guess here? What was the purpose here? Why they built these big jars? What they were keeping in here? Were they storing water? Were they storing wine? Maybe ashes? What? Any guesses?
Maybe a genie?
Oh, that's yes. It could be a genie. You could rub the jar and the genie would come out, and you can ask for a wish. I wish I had this particular jar if that had a genie in it. But any other guesses apart from genie? Okay, let me tell you. This here, as you can see here, this is a king in the center. This is called the Madho Singh II in the year 1902. So actually, these jars were built in the year 1902, and they were built to keep and store water here. But mind it, this is not something like a regular drinking water. This is actually the Ganges water, the Ganga water in it. So anybody, have you heard about River Ganga, the River Ganges from India?
Yes.
Okay. So here I also want to talk about slight spiritual aspect and the religious aspect, so that you can understand how the religion has played a very important role in the life of today, or even in that time, how religion has played an important role in the people's life here. So when you come to India and you see, spirituality is a very important part, and people here worship different gods and goddesses. And not only that, we worship gods and goddesses, we also worship different animals and birds, and somehow they're associated with their gods, and that's how they're being worshipped here. And along with that, we worship mountains and rivers. And that is how we have this river called Ganga, or the river Ganges, which is like a holy river. And that is where the Hindu people believe, and they take a pilgrimage and they take a holy bath in the Ganga water. So it is believed that if you take a holy bath, all your sins are washed away. So similarly, we have this king of Jaipur in the year 1902, Savai Madho Singh II, and he was a gentleman. He was a very religious person, and he always consumed the Ganga water for his drinking. So now in the year 1902, he was invited to London for a coronation function, and that is where he had to travel outside India, and that is how his travel time of 2 months, where he has to go and come back forth from London and coming back. So he asked his Treasury Department. So the Treasury Department issued 28,000 silver coins. They were melted, and that's how these jars were created. So they are 5 feet 2 inches tall. They were filled with the Ganga water, and that is how the king from here traveled to London, and he could consume the Ganga water throughout his journey from here. So that is how the religion was so important, and talking about River Ganga. And again, talking about River Ganga, as I said, people take a pilgrimage, and that is where we have these cities called Varanasi, Haridwar, and Rishikesh. So I'm not sure if you've heard about this spiritual city from India. It's called Varanasi. It is right on the banks of River Ganga. So this is the place where people comes and take this holy bath, and they take, they do this spiritual bath here where they cleanse the soul here. But a lot of Hindu people also have this belief that if you go to Varanasi in the last stage of your life, especially for old people, and if you die here and your cremation is done on the ghats of Ganga, you attain salvation. So a lot of old people come here in Varanasi and they check into these guest houses to die here. So imagine people checking into these guest houses to die. And now these guest houses have these policies where they only allow you to stay for a couple of weeks here. So that means you really need to be sure that you are right on the last stage of your life, because if you don't die within those 2 weeks, you have to check out from here. So this sounds funny and crazy, but that's how you have these places where people check in to die. But this is where I have a little story to share here. And this person, he visits these ashrams in Varanasi and he's meeting people. And that is where he talks about a very beautiful, important lesson to learn from here, from this story, that how we should resolve our queries and how we should resolve our conflicts before we go to bed or before we die here. So here I'll play a little video. It's a 3-minute video where we'll hear this little story from Varanasi. So we're taking a little detour going to Varanasi. So let me play that video for you. Just give me a quick minute here. So I play the video. Just make sure that you listen. It's a very important learning lesson as well. I'm sure you like that.
I had read about this guest house in Varanasi where people check in to die. It's called Kashi Labh Mukti Bhavan. Rooted in the belief system of many Hindus is that if you take your last breath in Kashi, you attain what is popularly known as fruit of Kashi or Kashi Labh, which is moksha or salvation. Now the interesting fact is that you're only allowed 2 weeks to stay in and die. So you have to be really sure. If you're still hanging around after 2 weeks, you got to check out. So I was really curious and fascinated to understand what would those people have learned who have not only accepted death as a reality, but are rather anticipating it with the timer on. So I went to Varanasi, spent a week in the guest house, and interviewed people who had checked in. Phenomenal, their life lessons were really thought-provoking. So in the same environment, I met Mr. Bhairav Nath Shukla, who has been the manager of Mukti Bhavan for last 44 years. He has seen more than 12,000 deaths. So I asked him, what have you learned after seeing both life and death at such close quarters? He shared with me 12 life lessons, of which I wrote a blog post, and it's read and shared by millions of people across the world and became highly popular. But there's one life lesson in that series which is Mr. Shukla's favorite and resonated deep with me, and the life lesson is resolve all conflicts before you go. He told me a backstory to it. There was a Sanskrit scholar of the times by the name of Ram Sagar Mishra. Mishra was one of the eldest of the 6 brothers and was closest to the youngest. One argument years ago led to this bitter communication between the brothers and led to a wall eventually partitioning the house. In his final years, Mishra checked into the guest house with his little pan case and told Shukla to reserve room number 3 for him because he was sure he's going to pass away on day 16th after his arrival. On day 14th, he said, I want my estranged brother of 40 years to come and see me. This bitterness heavies my heart. I want to resolve every conflict before I go. A letter was sent out. On 16th day, the brother arrived, and Mishra held his hand and asked him to bring down the wall dividing the house. He asked for his brother's forgiveness. Both brothers wept, and mid-sentence, Mishra stopped speaking. His face became calm, and he was gone in a moment. And I know that anecdote sounds straight out of a folk fiction novel, but Mr. Shukla told me that he has seen the same story replay over and over again with many different people who have come there. He said to me, Deepak, I see so many people carrying such unnecessary baggage throughout their life, only wanting to drop it at the very end of their journey. The trick, he said, however, lies in not having any conflict, but resolving every conflict as soon as you have it. You cannot and you should not go to bed having an argument, a disappointment, a resentment, and doubt. You should try to resolve it. Because you see, the good news is you're alive. The bad news is no one knows for how long. So resolve your conflicts today. I hope this makes and fuels your day.
Wow, what a beautiful lesson and a story it is, I hope you might have liked this story, and it's a very important lesson, and that's how we can take it forward, that we always resolve conflicts. So if you have anyone who you have not spoken to him for a long, if you have not spoken to someone for a long time, probably this is the time you can, make a call and speak to the people and resolve the conflicts here. So so this is how, when people travel to India, that's how they get connected in different ways. It's very, very cliche to say, but that's how, when you travel to India, you're not the same person again. You're a very different person when you go back to your hometown, your home country after visiting India. So I'll also be sharing Joel here in email later. So you have something to share?
Oh, I was just going to ask, what percent of the people actually die at that place, and then or check out?
I would not be sure about the people coming and actually staying in to die here as a practice. But if you're here in India, I would definitely recommend add Varanasi in the itinerary. It's a very kind of intense and it's kind of very different experience. But if you walk on the ghats of Ganga there, on average, that's the number is like. So on an average, every day, close to 250 to 300 dead bodies being cremated every day. So close to 300 people being cremated every day in Varanasi itself. And that's how people are coming and dying, So people actually in the last day of life, they come and the commission's done. Or a lot of people who are around Varanasi when they die, the family members bring their dead bodies of their, their old family members who are died. They bring their dead bodies to Varanasi like an overnight drive, and they would do the cremation in Ganga itself. So that is how it is being done here. So I'll also be sharing the link of this blog post he wrote about the 12 lessons of, from the story itself. So if anybody wants to read more about that, I'll be sharing that email with all that information in here. And for people who loves reading, I have a couple of recommendations. If you're into spirituality, I would highly recommend reading Bhagavad Gita. I hope some of you might have heard about this particular book. It's actually the teachings of Lord Krishna, which is called Bhagavad Gita. So if you're into meditation or if you're into Krishna's, you might have heard about it. If you want to read something on a lighter version, I would recommend maybe The Hina Artist. This is one which is a story based around in Jaipur in the 1950s. It's a fictional novel. Then other one is called Suitable Boy. And the other couple of one, which is The Palace of Illusion. So I'll be writing these couple of novels in the email later. So if anybody wants to know more about India or want to read about more spiritual books or the fictional novels as well. So it's a mixture of a couple of things which I'll be sending later as well. All right, so coming from Varanasi, coming back to Jaipur now, as we were traveling here in the Pink City, in the city palace, we took a little detour, and that is where I wanted to talk about the religion, and that's how we visited this spiritual city called Varanasi. But now we are back in Jaipur in the city palace. As we're walking into the corridors here, let's go to the second courtyard, and this is where it is called the Dancing Courtyard. So this is the palace main building. As you can see, it's a 6-story building. And this is where 3 floors are still very confined to the private life of the king himself. But the other 3 floors are open to public with the royal tour here. And this is the little courtyard here, which is known as the dancing courtyard or the Pritam Nivas. So as the name suggests, the dancing courtyard, this is where the king would come and sit here. So whenever the kings and the queens used to have their entertainment, that is where the people like artists, the theater artists, the dancers and singers used to come and perform for them. So back in those days, they never had Netflix, they never had these online tours or anything like that. So that's how they would have this dancing courtyard and people performing for them. Or either they could go outside where they would indulge in playing polo, which is the royal game of the rich here, and either they would go into hunting. So this building, as you can see, like a contrast in the theme here. So you're into the pink city where everything is being painted pink, but look at the irony, the house of the king himself, the main building is not being painted the pink. So it's more like a highlight the contrast in the pink theme where the main building is being painted as a yellow color. And as you see the courtyard here, it's a very small, brief courtyard, and there are 4 beautiful doors here. They can see the 2 doors on the left corner. And then you can see the other 2 doors on the right corner. So these are the 4 seasons of India, and every gate has been beautifully painted with these natural colors and hand painted, and they're representing one season of India. So can anybody tell me what do you see in the paintings and what season you think this could be? Any guesses? Is it spring? Is it monsoon? It is summers or winters? Okay, I could see Linda, you say some bird here. It's a peacock bird, obviously. So it's a peacock gate. And this is representing the monsoon season. So in India, when you come here in the month of July and August, it's the rainy monsoon season. And that's where you see a lot of peacocks, when they open their feathers and they come out and dance in the rain here. That's how we have this first gate here. Then we have the second gate here. This is the spring season. So spring season, when you have the fresh green vegetation, the colors that you see everywhere. And that's how it's being painted with this Leheria design, like a wave pattern in the design here on the gate. So the second one is the spring season, followed by the third one. And this one is this one is a winter gate. So winter gate has this beautiful winter flower, which is called the rose flowers. So in the month of December, January, February, we have the rose flowers here. And that's where you can see a lot of these rose paintings in the door here. So this is the winter gate. And last but not the least, this is my favorite gate here. This is the summer gate here. And anybody gets the right answer here would get to stay, and you come to stay in Jaipur and stay in the city palace. Can you get the right answer here? What flower you see in the painting? It's actually a summer flower from India in the summer gate. Any guesses? Bob, Linda, Lillian, any guesses? Murray? Okay, let me tell you. So this is actually the lotus flower, what you see in the painting. So lotus is like a water flower, like a water lily. It's been from India. So that is how you could see these beautiful petals being painted in the beautiful door here. So that is how we have 4 different gates, differently painted, all by hand paints. And these are representing the 4 seasons in India today. And this is right in the main courtyard of the palace here called the dancing courtyard. And as I was talking about that you can come and stay in the city palace, but none of you got the right answer here. But there's actually a thing here in City Palace in Jaipur, which actually happened in year 2019. So this became the first palace in the world to be listed on Airbnb. That means when you come to Jaipur, you can actually book a suite here. It's not a typical regular Airbnb. This is not your hotel here. There's only one suite which is listed on Airbnb. And this is something which is very expensive. And that is where you could be like the king or the queen of Jaipur, and you can stay for a night, and something is very expensive. And that is where it is on the left bottom of your screen here. So can anybody make a wild guess? What could be a price, an approximate cost for a night for a couple to stay in City Palace to be the king or the queen of Jaipur for a night? Any wild idea? Do you think it's like $100, maybe $1,000, or maybe $10,000?
5,000.
Okay, somebody says, okay, Perry, you says 5,000. All right, anybody wants to go beyond that, Mark?
20,000.
Sorry, Joel, what you said?
20,000.
Okay, $20,000 a night. Wow. How about you, Linda? What do you think?
50,000.
Oh, 50,000.
You get to meet the king. Come on now.
Oh yes, that's how. I mean, you're a special guest, and when the king is in town, not only you get to meet him, but you also get to see a lot of private areas of the palace. You know, you have access to a lot of their own private residence here. So this is actually 10,000 US dollars, which is the cost to be, you could pay here for a night, which is very expensive. But the best part for the royal family, what they have done here is the royal family members run a charitable trust here, and that trust works for the underprivileged woman and the girl child. So all the profits from the Airbnb actually goes for this charitable trust here, and that is where the money is going for the right cause. So here, when you come here, you can just take a little royal tour and you go inside the building looking at the 3 floors. But if you want to be like the residents and you want to meet the king, go ahead and you can book the suite on Airbnb. So now let's go inside the palace and see how these 3 different floors, which are open to public, how they were used by the people here. So this is the main gallery, the entrance point here. And look at this, how beautiful they have been painted here. So this is all 20 karat gold water. That's how this particular gallery has been painted, with a lot of ivory and gold. And you could see a lot of these British style chandeliers and hanging the ceiling here. So this is the image which I pulled out from Google. I've not met the royal family in person. So this is the current royal family of Jaipur. As you can see in the image here, you see this young gentleman on the left corner of your screen. He's the current king of Jaipur, and his name is Padmanabh Singh. He's only 22 years of age. So if anyone wants to follow the king of Jaipur in his life, even you can follow him on Instagram. He's a young chap. He's 22 years of age. So he travels the world around here. He spent a lot of time in Europe in summers, and winters he spent a lot of time in India here. So he plays polo and he travels the world around here. So his Instagram handle is mentioned on the bottom right here, which is called Pacho Jaipur. So Pacho is his nickname. So all his horses, they're named as Pacho and Pacho Jaipur. And now if you see the other family members, you can see the father of the king in the cream tuxedo on the right corner, followed by the younger daughter, the younger sister of the king. Then we have the mother of the king right in the center standing in here, followed by the younger brother of the king. And now we have the grandmother of the king right in the chair here. So this is the current royal family here. So the royal family members doesn't have any powers. They are not ruling. They are not doing anything in the local law and order here. So after 1947, India became independent, and that's how all these titles were taken away. So they are very rich people here. They're running their palace, and that's how they make a lot of their business and money through the tourism industry, where they have converted their palaces into museums, into restaurants and hotels here. So a lot
Puneet,
of-
Puneet, why isn't the father of the king the king?
There you go. I was waiting that why nobody's asking that why this young gentleman is the king where the father is not the king. So let me give the answer here. As I was talking about that, that after 1947, India became independent, where the king's power and the title was taken away. So before 1947, the king were the actual rulers, and they were the local law and order. So they were the king, and they always had their wish, and they could have whatever they could do. So all these Hindu kings before that had multiple wives, and they had multiple kids with all these multiple wives. But now after 1947, as India became independent, so now we have a new Hindu Marriage Act law that doesn't allow polygamy. That means it is illegal to have more than one wife. So the first king to get married here after independence was Bhavani Singh, and he's no more right now. But so he married to his only one wife, and this is the old lady in the chair here. So she was the only wife of the king now. So she, along with her husband, as a couple, only had one daughter. And they never had a son here. So she's the only daughter here. And the daughter cannot come on the throne here and take the title, because India is more like a male patriarchal society. You always need a son in the family. So now this daughter is skipped in the generation here. So she grows up and she gets married to the gentleman on the right corner. So this is the young couple that got newly married. So he's a son-in-law, not the son in the house. So this couple now have 3 kids here, which is we can see here. So as the kids were growing up here, so this young gentleman was 4 years of age, and that is when he was adopted by the grandparents. So he was declared as a prince here. So this old couple here, as they never had a son in the house here in the family, they were fearing that if they would die without a legal heir, after the death of the king, the title and the property would go to the current king's younger brother here, which they never wanted. And that is why they adopted their grandson, and that is how he became the legal son of the house. So when the king died in the year 2011, he was declared as the next king in line, and that is why we see a skip of the generation here.
Thanks.
I hope I'm not confusing with the adoption process here, but that's how it is, kind of confusing, where the current mother of the king becomes actually the sister of the king, but that's not really the fact. Okay, so here we have this current royal family. So let's see how they have different floors now. So you come to the top floor here. So ladies, as we remember, we talked about the Sheesh Mahal in Amer, the mirror palace. So now you can ask your husbands, that, okay, let's have one room in the house where you can have entirely room covered with the glasses and mirrors. And that could be a fancy winter room for you. So same idea here. You're in the city palace. You're on the 6th floor here. And that is where you see this Sheesh Mahal, which is the mirror palace here. So whenever the king used to have their palaces here, they always would have one floor or a one room dedicated as the winter room. So which is called the Sheesh Mahal, the mirror room here. So when you come inside the room here, they would close the lights. I mean, they close the doors and switch off the lights, and they would light up these candles here, and they would give you a demonstration that how this beautiful rooms illuminates in the light, looks like stars in the sky here. So I also be playing a little video later, but let's go down under the 2nd floor here. So from the 6th floor here, you come down on the 5th floor. And look at this stunning blue room, all indigo. So this is the blue room for the royal family members. And this is where they used to celebrate the Krishna's birthday. So we have this very popular Indian god called Krishna. And that is how his birthday was celebrated in the month of August. So the indigo color, the blue color, is actually the color of Lord Krishna. And that's how this was painted here. So there's a very low ceiling here. The floor is all open here. There's a lot of light and wind comes in here. And as you can see, there are hooks attached in the ceiling here. So that is where they could have these swings attached to the hooks. And that's where the royal family could spend their summer and the monsoon time here. So it's a very beautiful, elaborate blue room, which is very famous on Instagram right now. And that's how you get these beautiful pictures like that. And now after that, you come down on the 4th floor here. And this is what is very beautifully all painted with the 20 karat gold water. So what we see here is called Shobha Nivas. And this is the room where it is called the gold room, which is all beautifully semi-precious gems and stones. And this is the room where the royal family members used to celebrate the Diwali festival. So if you know about the Hindu festivals, we have the biggest Hindu festival called Deepavali or Diwali, which actually comes in the later October, early November. And it's like a big festival with a lot of firecrackers and celebration and lights here. And that is where we do a big prayer, like a puja. So the current royal family members still do the Diwali puja in this particular room here. So they conduct this prayer here, and that is how they use. So that's how we have these 3 floors which are open to public. It's the royal tour here. But there are again 3 other floors which are left here called the dining area, the bedroom area. And these are very confined to the private residence of the king and his friends, or either if you're staying in the Airbnb here, that's when you have access to all those areas. So now I'll play a little video, and that is where you see the glimpse of all these areas, including a lot of other areas which we've already covered here. So you'll hear the voice of the king of Jaipur, Padmanabh, where he's talking about his own house. And let's play the video here.
For 3 centuries, my home has been waiting. There are halls that glitter with the glory of the past. Rooms that haven't yet been discovered. And each corner has a story to tell.
So this is the brief teaser of the city palace. I hope you find the king of Jaipur pretty handsome here. He's a young chap, only 22 years of age. And this is the top 6th floor where we talked about the mirror room here. So you can take some inspiration from here. You can see how this beautiful room looks like when it is illuminated in the light here. So after this, when you go down in here, you could see the king himself standing in his own gallery here overlook the garden here. And now look on the left corner of your screen on the bottom here, the name of the king. His name is Padmanabh Singh. But now you also see the 2 titles here. The first title is called Maharaja, which means the king of the kings. That's a very common title used by all the Indian kings in India. But other title, what you see here is actually Savai, which is derived from a word called Sava, which means quarter extra. So this particular title was given to Jai Singh II, the founder of Jaipur in 1720s, by the Mughal king Aurangzeb. And this was actually given to him because he was very intelligent king of that time. So he was the most smartest king of India at that point of time. And that is why he was given the title. That means he was quarter extra smart than the other kings here. So for example, in the room today, we all are intelligent. I'm 100%, but now the rest of you are quarter extra smart than me, So I'll give you a title called Savai. So example, Joel, I'll call you Savai Joel. So that means you're quarter extra smart than the other people. Or maybe Linda, I'll call you Maharani Savai Linda. So you are the Maharani, the queen of the queens with quarter extra smartness. So that is how this title was given. So all the kings before Jai Singh first, you'll find only one title is only Maharaja. But after Jai Singh second, you see all the other kings using two titles, which called Maharaja Savai. And that is how we have these kings of Jaipur in the royalty. So today the kings are no longer the royalty with their powers here, but they are more like the feudal lords. They had a lot of wealth, they had a lot of properties, they have a lot of these palaces and forts, and that's how they make a lot of money here. So do we have any questions about the Pink City or about the city palace or the royalty here? The kings of Jaipur or the local people here? Yes, Linda, I could see you.
Okay. Are they encouraging the young king to find a wife?
Not really. I'm not sure how the things are happening in their personal affairs, but I'm sure it is too early for him to get married. He's only 22. So generally nowadays people are getting married in their late 20s or early 30s. That's the right time,
Right.
But like if you talk about maybe a decade earlier or maybe 2 decades before, a lot of people used to get married in their mid 20s. So typically you get graduated in the age of 22, 23 here. And after a couple of years, when you are settled down with your job, so that's the first thing what the parents do here is. So once your son is getting, once he's settled with the job, the first thing is get him married, So he's settled for his life. And for women, for ladies, when they're done with their typical graduation, their college, if they're not pursuing anything into a commercial or any specific business degree, they would be getting married in the mid 20s.
Nothing.
Puat. Puat.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Sure. Who's next?
Sherry. How do you chat?
How long did it take to construct the palace? How many years?
So this palace it took over kind of a decade here, around 10 years. So that's how the major structure was built. But along these years, in the last 300 years, they have done some renovations every now and then. So the next major renovation was done in the 1870s. So a lot of what we see today, like this particular gallery, what we're looking at, there's a lot of ivory work here. So there's 4 doors, one door here, the second one here, and there's similarly 2 doors on the other end here. So there are like ivory doors here. A lot of the paintings, what we see in the ceiling and the walls is a lot of gold work. So it's all 20-karat gold water. And all these pillars are white marble. So a lot of that was done in the late 1870s, because if you see here in the early 16th, 17th century, they always use the red sandstone, which was a major building material. That's what is widely available in the area. But later in the 18th, 19th century, after the construction of Taj Mahal, marble became more popular here. So all these palaces which were built in the 19th and the late 18th century, they were built with the white marble. Yes, ma'am. Who's next?
Does his grandmother choose his bride? This is Sherry. Does his grandmother choose his bride?
So generally, Sherry, what happens here is I'm not sure if you've watched this particular show on Netflix. There's a show called, I'm not sure the exact name. It goes by they also come up with a new second season just last month. I think it is about marriage proposals or the Indian marriage or the Indian wedding, something like that.
Yeah.
Watch that Netflix. It's called the Indian weddings or the something like Indian matchmaking. So majority of people in India, even today, they're living in the small towns and the villages, the small towns and the villages. It's only the big cities where you can see the cosmopolitan big metro culture, which is typically can be found in every part of the world today. So the big cities where people are kind of doing these love marriages, where as a couple they find their partner and they get married, and they only take their families along. But the majority of people living in small towns and the small villages, even today, it's more like a family thing, like a family affair. The parents comes into picture, their the grandparents come into picture, and typically your parents come into picture where they would find a prospective
Wife.
partner, and they would do the matchmaking. They would bring their kids together and give them a couple of meetings so that the young adults could meet and spend some time, couple of times. And these
Right.
are like very formal meetings where the couple could interact with each other. And both the partners, if they agree and they say, yes, okay, we are fine. And that's how the matchmaking and the what we call the Indian, the uh, proposal or the wedding thing is done. So like I got married, for me, it's been 11 years. So mine was like a typical family proposal where I was introduced to my partner, my wife today. We met thrice here, and then they were like an hour long meeting, three times we met, and after three meetings we said, okay, yes, we want to get married. So that is, so it's like an arranged marriage, we call that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Bob, you have to unmute yourself, Bob.
All right.
Okay, we're unmuted. Hi.
Yes, hi.
There's such beautiful artwork, and some of it seems so significant where you said like the doors were designed a special way. Who designed these? Were there special committees or people that chose which colors were going to be where? And
So
where?
a lot of things, if you see, I'm sorry, I'm not sure of your name here. I could see only Bob here. But ma'am, if you see here in India, a lot of things come from our old, these mythological stories and books, and a lot of things come from the religion itself. So if you notice on these gates itself, I'm sure you can see the screen here right now.
Yes.
So as you can see on these screen, I've not gone into details because again, I can talk for hours and I can talk about religion itself for 1 hour. We don't have that kind of time, but I don't want to bore you here. So if you see these gates here, their idea was derived from these Hindu god called Shiva. So we have the Shiva family. Shiva is one of the major gods in India. He's also called the destroyer. So we have three gods: Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. So we have there's a person who has created the universe. There's a kind of protector. There's a destroyer, and Shiva has his family. So we have Shiv along with Parvati, his wife, and his two kids, Ganesh and Kartik. So each of these gates actually has this resemblance. So if you see this particular gate here, you see a small statue here.
Yes.
So this is actually the statue of goddess Parvati, the wife of Shiva. So that is how it is dedicated to her with the lotus flower and this painting here. So that is how a lot of designs and paintings come from these stories and these mythological things. So on this one, you can see another small statue. This is Lord Shiva.
Yes.
This one here in spring, you see Ganesha. Ganesha has an elder brother called Kartikeya. So this is where you can see the Kartik. So a lot of that comes from the religion backgrounds and all these, folk stories. So this is how the importance here we have. Again,
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I have another question going way back to
You
the
never should have
elephants.
started with her.
That the elephants, they were all designed so differently, and I wondered, do the individuals paint their own animals, or do they go to other artists? Does that signify?
So again, mostly you'll find the flower paintings or some statues, there's some gods or goddesses. So if you see here, you can see some flowers on his leg, but again, you can see a tiger painted hunting a deer here. Can you see that?
Yes. Oh, as a matter of fact, yes. Now
The
that you
tiger
mention,
hunting a deer. So these are the Mahawats, the owner of these elephants. They paint these elephants on their own, and every Mahawat has some different paintings just to make the elephant more fancy and more beautiful here.
very
So
interesting.
like this one here, you see some lot of these flowers, some petals and these things.
Very interesting.
You said there was 4 million people in Jaipur live there.
Yes. Jaipur is home to close to 4 million people today.
How many people would you say are like middle class, or most of the people poor and they have jobs?
So most of the people, if you see the Indian society, the majority of the population is the middle class. And again, the middle class is kind of divided into the lower middle class, the higher middle class, and the lower, so that's how the higher and the lower middle class. So these are the people who are kind of, they have their own houses, or some of them been renting it, and they have there's some kind of vehicle for them. They could be, they could send their kids to for normal schools, and they can afford a good life. So the majority of people is that class, which could be the 70 to 75%. And then we have around 3 to 5%, which is the higher or the rich class here, which is very few, which is a handful of people. And then we have the other, which is the poor class, which is around 20%, 15, 18 to 20%. And that is what the class is, the poor class, which is the below the poverty line. And these are the people which are majorly found in the bigger towns. Because majorly, if you go to the small towns, that is where everybody would have their own house. They would have some kind of a job. They would have some piece of land. They could do some farming. So they can make there some money here. But a lot of people from these small towns come to these big towns. And when they're in a big town, they're not educated, and that is where they end up being jobless on the streets, and that is where poor. So all these poor people are the people who are kind of found in a lot of big cities like Delhi, Jaipur, Bombay. And I'm sure you might have heard about slums, if you have seen the movie called Slumdog Millionaire. It's a
Yes.
slum in Mumbai. So a lot of people stay in these kind of slums, and gradually and slowly they kind of move in the, in the bracket here. Once they, after a few generations, people get educated, they get jobs, and they make money, and that's how they move forward.
Do you want to flip to the gallery view?
Okay. Do we have more questions? Because I just at the last part, I want to share for 5 minutes. I want to talk about the local food from Jaipur. If somebody's a foodie here, loves the food here, I would love to share the local food from Jaipur.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so let me finish the food thing, and then we can end up with the, we can get into the last questionnaire again. Okay.
One question, what about Sikhs? Where did they come into the picture in Jaipur and the rest of India?
So Sikh is a different religion altogether. They are not
Right.
Hindus, very small pocket here. And they actually come from the north of India. So if you see the map of India, this is the Rajasthan. Jaipur is here. And this is the state of Punjab. So this is where a lot of Sikh come from. So majority of Sikh come from here. They wear a turban. But it is not that the Sikh are not found in the other parts of India. There are a lot of Sikhs in Jaipur as well, but their population is quite less as compared to the other religions in the other cities of India. But of course, yes, if you come to Punjab, that's where you find them in a big number.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move to the last part here. We'll talk about the Indian food, especially the local food from Jaipur. So let me share this part. Just give me one quick second. Okay, does anybody like the Indian curries, the Indian food? Is there any favorite of yours?
Yes.
So I'm sure a lot of people might know samosa, what you can see on the left corner of your screen here, right? The samosa is a very famous snack which from India, and even outside India where you have a big Indian population. So when you come to any city in India, you find samosa everywhere. But again, we have some local delicacies. So if you come to Jaipur, you come to Rajasthan, we have the local snack called pyaz ki kachori, which can be seen here on the right bottom of your screen. So it's a very similar like a samosa. The only difference is the shape and design here. So the outer layer is like a chickpea flour, which is deep fried and crunchy. But the outside here, we have the onions and the masala. So that's like a spicy, flavored version of that. So this is a pyaz ki kachori. And whenever we consume these kind of snacks in the morning or evening, it is not a main course. It's made like a before the main course. And we always try to combine them with a drink. It's more like a McDonald's combo. So in the winter season, we have a lot of chai. So you can see this chai here, the masala chai. So tea is actually a British thing, which was it is gifted by the Britishers to India. So they left India, but this habit was still in the Indian families. But we totally Indianized the chai here, and we call it masala chai. So Indian people love masala chai, so add a lot of sugar and milk. Along with that, we also added a lot of different spices like the black pepper, ginger, and cardamom, and a lot of other things. And similarly, in the summer season, we love to drink the lassi. It's the drink what you see on the top right corner. So lassi is this yogurt shake which is thick and savory. It's thick shake which is very sweet and savory. And I'm sure some of you might have tried lassi. It's more famous like the mango lassi nowadays. So when you come to Jaipur, this is your best place to have the masala chai. It's a very small corner shop, but this is where you get the best masala chai in Jaipur, and that's how they make it. So chai also have a lot of health benefits. So anybody who wants to reduce weight, you should drink a lot of green tea. Somebody who wants to keep their skin young and vibrant and glowing, you should be drinking a lot of black tea. So tea is the second most drank drink in the world after water. So this most drink in the world, having a lot of health benefits. That's the best chai in Jaipur. And if you want to have lassi, this is yogurt shake here. So this is your best place to have lassi in Jaipur.
Maybe you start drinking.
That's how they serve into this glass, which is like an earthen clay pot here. They add a layer of cream on the top with a pinch of rose water. This is the best yummy lassi what you can find in Jaipur here, called the lassi wala. This is typically the street snacks here what you can find. But when you go into main course as the vegetable curries and non-veg here, so majorly the Indian population is the vegetables, like a vegetarian here. It's very difficult for us to be vegan. So we consume a lot of dairy products. So this is the paneer called the cottage cheese, very famous across North India. But the other platter, what you see on the right corner here, is called the dal bati churma. And this is the platter from Rajasthan, the local cuisine here. So dal is this yellow lentil soup. I'm sure a lot of people might have tried the lentil or the dal. Then we have bati. So bati is the same wheat dough which is used for the bread. Instead of making a bread, they would make these round shaped balls. They put in a fireplace or oven, and that's how it's baked and it is ready to serve. And if you put this bati into a mixer grinder, you crush it, it becomes a powder form. And that is where you add sugar and dry fruits. It's become a sweetener. So this is your delicacy, the best thing from Jaipur called dal bati churma. So anybody who wants to try this, I'll also be sending you recipes later. So you can try that something on the weekend. So you can make a masala chai or you can make a dal bati churma. And if somebody wants to eat meat here, you can even try non-veg. So a lot of people in India, they eat butter chicken, which is very common and very famous across North India. In South India, you find a lot of fish there. But here in Jaipur, we have a local recipe called the lal mas. And this is what you see on the right corner. So this is not chicken, this is actually lamb meat. So lamb meat is cooked overnight, which is very soft and tender. It has a very strong spices, and that is how it is also referred as the red meat. So this particular is the lamb meat, which is actually, so this recipe comes from the royal kitchen of the king of Jaipur, and that is how we have this recipe very famous in the local cuisine here. Spicy, and you can again combine with some different style of breads, the garlic naan or the butter naan here. So this is very briefly about the typical veg, non-veg, and the local streets from Jaipur and from local flavor here. And just to end the tour here, I also want to play some little music with a video, and you'll hear the folk sound and the folk dances of Jaipur from Rajasthan region. So this is the folk music from Jaipur, from Rajasthan. Let me play that for you very briefly. Very brief in terms of the sounds of Jaipur from Rajasthan region. So every state in India has their own folk dances and their own folk songs. So Joel, I'll be sending you an email slightly later, in maybe after a few minutes. In that email, you'll have a lot of information from the books I was recommending, from the blog I was talking about. I'll also be sharing the recipes. And along with that, I'll also be sharing some links of my favorite music and movies from Bollywood and these folk songs from Rajasthan. So if you're into music, you can watch those links and that will be there. And along with that, I'll also be sharing a couple of other things. So you'll also be getting a little guidebook about Jaipur. So I'll be sharing my social media pages, my Facebook, my Instagram. If you want to see a lot of things from Rajasthan and Agra, you can follow that. And this would be a little guidebook which I'll be sharing about Jaipur. It talks about all the information, the places to shop, the places to visit to eat, and the places to visit when you come to Jaipur. So this is what we added into that email here. And along with that, I'll also have a little souvenir as a gift for you guys, because I know when people travel, they collect souvenirs like postcards and stamps and magnets. So here I love photography, and I've created some digital prints from my India series. And this is a postcard, what you see on your screen here. So this is the Hawa Mahal, the wind palace, what we saw from Jaipur. And this is a little postcard which I'm sharing from you, on the email. And this is what it looks like. Can you see this one? So this is a little postcard I'll be attaching in the email. So if you like that, you can print out and make a postcard, share with your family or friend. Or even if you print out on a slightly bigger, you can frame in your house. Could be a memory of this virtual trip to Jaipur.
Oh,
So this
that's
all
great. Oh, well, I'll be sure to pass that along. Thank you.
Yes, once I send that, you can forward to the rest of the members and the guests here, so that you get all the information from here. But yes, it's an open house. If we have any questions, if